published a letter criticising the government or the authorities in Zimbabwe for not basically delivering rights and freedoms to the people.
We have. We are part of the Zimbabwe Council of Churches. And as the Zimbabwe Council of Churches, we have published several papers. We've had several meetings with government officials, both at the local level, provincial level, and at the national level, to make our voice heard on various issues.
Do you think that the clerics, or some of them at least in Zimbabwe, have been a little bit cowed by the fact, for instance, if you look at the celebrated example 5 years ago of the Archbishop of Bulawayo, Pius Nkube, very outspoken against Robert Mugabe. I mean, he described him, for instance, he said things like, Mugabe is a megalomaniac, he loves power, he lives for power, I will not be bullied by him, and we all know what happened to Pius Nkube. He had to resign, didn't he, because there was a video repeatedly shown on state TV of him purportedly in bed with a woman. And that's the kind of thing that can happen, that the clerics are sat on. So does it make you all feel a bit cowed?
It can put people off, but here we're talking about principle. That is a side issue. That's something that came in, but it's not the main issue. Yes, what we're really talking about is one could be victimized. And yes, we're always mindful of that, but it doesn't put us off the main focus, which is to speak in, to defend the people.
Have you been victimised? Because I should say, actually, that before you became a bishop, you were ordained as a priest in 2009. You were very quickly then, you were ordained as a bishop, as a priest in the UK, yes. Very quickly made a bishop in Zimbabwe. But before that, you worked as a banker in the commercial sector and also at the World Bank. But you left Zimbabwe in 2004 because there were fraud allegations against you and a number of other bankers. So do you yourself fear being persecuted?
Not at all. At that time, it was a market issue. A lot of bankers left Zimbabwe. I don't think there were any fraud allegations against anybody, but it was a wave of persecution against the financial sector. And a lot of bankers left Zimbabwe. Some have gone back, others haven't. But I don't think we fear victimization.
And now, as a bishop, as a man of the cloth, do you worry?
No, I don't at all. I still speak out when I have to. As I say, it's a question of principle, and I don't think, and there's a lot that's been said about persecution in Zimbabwe. Yes, there is some of that, but not many people have been put off. People do still speak out, and as a cleric, I feel it's my duty to do that, and I still do.
And, I mean, it's just that, one wonders how clerics like you, you're highly educated, you had your undergraduate degree was at Cambridge University in the UK, you have a PhD from Harvard University, you are a doctor, a PhD, and one wonders how you actually operate in trying to be an opponent of evil where you see it being committed in Zimbabwe. Do you ally yourself with opposition forces politically, or do you try to keep above the fray? How do you actually operate? I
keep above the fray. I just take the view that I'm here to promote human rights. I'm here to speak out and to sound the alarm when something goes wrong in society, not to align myself with any particular party, but I'm here for the people, for everybody, whether they're Anglicans, Roman Catholics, or any denominations. I'm here just to provide, that backup, to provide comfort and to give a voice to the voiceless.
Because, I mean, we have seen in the past priests who've been more politically active than that, something like Bishop Oscar Romero in Nicaragua, Desmond Tutu in South Africa, Trevor Huddleston, against apartheid again in South Africa, that they almost go beyond their role in the church. And I wonder whether you see that kind of activist role for yourself as a cleric, or do you just say, no, my influence just has to remain within the church and I use that as my medium, or could you go further?
At the moment, I use the church as my medium. I have a duty to play. I have a duty to my people, to my flock. I have a duty also to everybody else without a voice. So in time, that may grow beyond what it is now. And if you look at Desmond Tutu, he wasn't always that champion. He started from somewhere. Over time, he became what he became.
Is that going to be you then, over time? And everybody's going to say Bishop Julius Makoni in Zimbabwe?
That's not my aim, but if it gets there, yes, that's the way it'll end up. It may happen, but a lot depends on the environment. It's a contextual thing. If the environment calls for that, yes, it will happen.
What kind of relationship do you have with the political rulers in Zimbabwe? The president, of course, Robert Mugabe, been there since, you know, more than 30 years.
Yes.
Because you actually met him in
Yes.
October 2011 when you invited the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Rowan Williams, to go to Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Very big meeting. It was the first time that a British dignitary had met Robert Mugabe in about 10 years.
Yes.
So you were at that meeting. How did he receive you?
Very well. I mean, he was very welcoming to all of us. There were about 14 bishops at the meeting. We were well received. We had a very good meeting and very interesting meeting. And I think it was a very successful meeting. Seeing what happened after that, after the Archbishop left, we had a lot of success in the courts. And I think
should just remind everybody, I mean, because Rowan Williams said he had a candid and serious discussion with Robert Mugabe, put to him his concerns about a renegade bishop, Bishop Kunongo, who had appropriated something like 40% of church land in Zimbabwe, and he wasn't happy about that. And a Supreme Court ruling at the end of last year found against Bishop Kunongo. So do you attribute that success then directly to the fact that Rowan Williams had gone and spoken to Robert Mugabe?
Partly, Archbishop Rowan's visit was important insofar as it highlighted the fact that Kunonga had left the church. That point had not been made publicly because Kunonga at that time was claiming that he was an Anglican. OK,
I don't want to go too much into the details of that particular case. It's just I use it to illustrate this point, which is to what extent does the international clergy, like Rowan Williams at the time and so on, how far do they assist you in any battle that you may see you have to fight inside Zimbabwe?
They assist us insofar as we are part of the Anglican Communion, and their involvement in our case gives hope to our people. It shows that we are not alone. We are part of a communion, of the Anglican Communion, and that is the importance of having external clergy, as you call them, like the Archbishop, former Archbishop of Canterbury, visit Zimbabwe, because we are the same communion. And that's very important.
So when the Ugandan-born Archbishop of York here, John Sentamu, said 5 years ago, he, on television, removed his dog collar and said, I am not going to replace this until, his words were, until Mugabe leaves.
Yes.
Is that helpful?
It is helpful. He's doing that in sympathy with fellow Anglicans in Zimbabwe, showing that we are one and the same. We belong to the same body.
And it doesn't in any way give ammunition to Robert Mugabe to say, well, look, you know, he may be an African priest, but he's based in the West and so on. This is yet another example of the freedom fighter, the president of Zimbabwe, here is a Western interest acting against me.
He could do that. That could be the case, but still the point is made. He is fighting a communion. He's not fighting one person, be it Sentamu, or one person in Zimbabwe. He's fighting the Anglican Communion.
You just said a moment ago, when you met Robert Mugabe with Rowan Williams, that he received you and the other bishops very well. Wouldn't that worry you? Wouldn't you like him to say, oh, you're that bishop who creates mischief. Why have you come to see me?
No, it was good because he received us well, we were able to interact and discuss the issues and make progress.
And what
that was very important.
And what about the Prime Minister, Morgan Tsvangirai, who, of course, leads the the Movement for Democratic Change, T, that's his particular faction, the main one. Do you get on with him?
We have met. We get on insofar as we've discussed business, that have we met. But he also is very personable. He's received us very well. In fact, when Archbishop Rowan Williams visited, we visited the Prime Minister as well, and we're well received.
All right, and at the moment, you know, obviously there has been a great deal of discussion and work to put together this draft constitution for Zimbabwe, and a referendum is due to be put to the people. And now the MDC and ZANU-PF have agreed the terms of the constitution, and so, you know, civil society groups are saying, so what's the point of putting this to a referendum? Because the people are not going to have any voice, very little time to consider what the Constitution is saying. We want the vote delayed. There is a move in the High Court to try to get it delayed. Where are you in this debate?
The experts will say that there isn't much time to consider. But to the ordinary person, they're saying, well, we weren't expecting a perfect document. We're not expecting perfection here. But what we have is better than what we had in the past. That's point number one. And secondly, this will pave the way for elections that everybody wants. So we know that in time we could still improve on this document, but it's progress.
You think it's progress? So, I mean, for instance, it abolishes the role of Prime Minister, although it does improve parliamentary oversight to some extent of the President.
Yes.
But it still controversially does give the President quite a lot of say in how the army and the security forces are deployed both outside and inside Zimbabwe.
Yes, but...
And that's something that people say, that's not enough of a curb on the presidential power.
It also makes for a sturdier parliament, one that can overrule that. can overrule the president if he deploys the army somewhere. And that is progress. It also makes provision for an independent prosecutor. And things like that are progress in Zimbabwe. Nothing is going to happen overnight to overrule everything that's happened in the past.
So when your namesake, Andrew McConey, no relative of the National Constituent Assembly, which is an independent body that has been scrutinising the draft constitution, says that it should be rejected because there hasn't been enough time to consider it. Veritas, a legal research and advisory group, also very concerned that there's some kind of stitch-up between the political parties which is going to deny the people a real chance to scrutinise the document. You say no problem as far as I'm concerned.
No, I say it's a voice, it's an opinion, it should be heard, but let the people vote. And that's what counts at the end of the day. It's what the majority of the people vote for.
But if it's not been translated, because there's not enough time into the main languages, vernacular languages in Zimbabwe, how are people going to read it?
Well, then they won't vote for it, will they? But if they vote for it, then they're...
But wouldn't it have been better, as Veritas has said, to have given enough time for it to have been translated so that people can read the document?
True, it could have been better, yes, but if things are the way they are, people are also saying yes, from what they have seen. And a lot of people can read English in Zimbabwe, and they will be able to understand that. I think there's not enough time for the experts to analyse it. But for the common man, and the ordinary person out there, even if you give them 3 years, arguably, they may just still come to the same conclusion.
And no protection for